have lots of stories about Sandy, but one of the most memorable for me is the very first time he invited me to his house. And of course, that house is a museum in and of itself. But really the highlight was him taking me down to his train track, his train station, his train collection. He had just finished building it. And we spent probably 2 hours down there just playing with trains. I loved trains as a kid, never had one, never had even a small one. And Sandy just loved his trains down there. And we just played for 2 hours, two little kids playing trains. It was just a great time to get to know him and then of course then get the tour of the rest of the house. But the highlight was just being where he was just as a kid in a train track. It was just a lot of fun. I appreciated that from Sandy because he took me into his little world. It was a lot of fun.
Hi, I'm Jane Ferreira. I'm Executive Director of the Honolulu Navy League, and I've known Sandy. I knew Sandy probably for 11 years, and I first met him at Rotary because we both were part of the same Rotary. And then I used to volunteer for the Navy League at the same time, and then I became Executive Director. And we would have lunch often. We would do a lot of things together. And he always asked, how are our sailors? How are our sea cadets? And what can I do to help you with your great mission of serving those who serve? Sandy was always there for us. He was always making sure that whatever we needed, we had funds to cover it, but he really cared. And it was more than just the money. It was just, to him, money was inconsequential, but to him, it was all about what he could do, the lives that he could touch, the lives that he could make a difference in. And he made a difference in more than you can ever imagine, because he made so many things possible. The Navy League, we serve those who serve and their families, and again, the Sea Cadets is helping develop tomorrow's leaders. And Sandy was such a big part of that. Sea services were his life, and he was in the Navy and for a short time, but the Navy was always a part of his life, and I'm so blessed to call him a friend. And we were friends. We saw each other all the time, and it's funny because if I saw him twice in the same month and I didn't ask for funding for something, he would just show up and give me a check. I said, Sandy, there's nothing going on this month. He said, no, there's always something going on, and I know you have a good place for this, because I know, Jane, you are so cheap that you will find a good place for this money and fund something. And the Sea Cadets actually did a promotion ceremony at Sandy's house, and really going through his house and seeing the museum was such a highlight. Some of the kids still talk about that, and when we shared that Sandy had passed, they were sad, and they were hoping to go back and see his museum again. So all the history he had in his house, and all the history he had that he retained himself, he could talk about everything in his house and what it meant to him and how he was a part of it and why it was in his house. So I just want to say thank you for being a part of Sandy's life. Sandy, thank you for being a part of our lives. You touched so many, and you made such a profound difference in the lives for so many. So thank you very much for all you did in your lifetime. You'd be really, really missed. Thank you.
I would love to share a quick story that tells a lot about Sandy. I met him, I've known him for about 3 years, but I've only got to speak to him a few times. And in very short order, I met him at the Hawaii Theater, and he came in, and I realized he was a very brave man, and quickly I realized he was a very kind soul. Brave because he walked in letting everyone know how he felt wearing his red Trump hat, and he didn't let anybody stop him from believing what he believed. And I thought, wow, what a brave man. And quickly I realized what a kind soul. We got to talking, and I never knew anything about how he grew up or how he lived. I just knew him from us speaking and the stories that he shared with me and how kind he was. And when he came to our home was the last time that I got to see Sandy. He was just so kind and gracious and such a wonderful person. And unfortunately, after he passed is when I found out what he did for our community and what he's going to continue to do for the children of Hawaii, for the military, for his country. And he's an amazing man, and we should all strive to be somewhat like him. And I just wanted to share that because he truly is an amazing man.
I first got to know Sandy through the USS Bowfin, and he was a big donor to Bowfin. He had commissioned to have this 9-foot model designed, and it was a cutaway. And it is the highlight of the Bowfin Museum, so don't ever miss the museum and miss his model that he commissioned specifically for Bowfin. And without further ado, he was #1 fan of Donald Trump. He met him many, many years ago, and he was so honored to wear his Trump shirts, and I was lucky enough to give him one. And he would be thrilled when someone would come up and thank him for wearing his Trump shirt in these turbulent times. And I gave him, to keep him happy, I bought him a Trumpy bear. And if you unzip it, an American flag flies out of the back. And that was one of his prized possessions and I was always very lucky to give that to him. And he had given me little trinket gifts along the way, and I treasure every time I turn the corner at my house and I find something, oh, Sandy gave me this. He was a very, very gifted, kind, generous man, and I loved him for it. You know, we all know that Sandy was a great patriot to America, and he certainly was one of the most patriotic I ever met. But what hasn't been highly mentioned is his love for his kitties. He loved his cats so much. And I was fortunate enough to be trusted to cat sit for him and house sit. And unfortunately, and one of the days before this happened, he needed to go to the doctor. And he asked if I would go with him to take his kitty, Avatar. Avatar was a very special kitty. And so we talked to Dr. White, and his prognosis was not very good. But Sandy had a trip planned, and I cat sat, and unfortunately, you know, the next day, one of his kitties passed away, Avatar. And it just broke my heart. And he loves his kitties so much. He always had kitties, and he loved his Siamese kitties. And it was always most important to him to make sure somebody took care of his kitties. And that was the saddest part, because he just loved them. And he made sure he took good care of them. And he would call me over. He said, Nancy, come and take pictures of me and my kitties. Take pictures. And I said, okay, I'm coming. He just catered to them, and he catered to America, and he catered to his friends. And I was fortunate to talk to him a few weeks before he passed, and I knew he was sad. And greatest honor was knowing Sandy was a great honor.
I met Sandy Gaston in 1991 at the 50th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack anniversary. It was an interesting guy, big guy at 6'5", funny guy in many ways, but always inquisitive. I'll start with the funniest thing. In Japan, we were in a taxi. He couldn't fit in the back seat. So we had to put him in the front seat, and the Japanese taxi was so tight, he had to bend over and over this. I said, good for you, son, you got a bow in Japan. And he got his left knee in, and his knee was hitting the taxi meter run, and all the paper was flying out, zzz, and the poor taxi guy was having a fit. It had to be one of the funniest times ever for Sandy Gaston, myself in Tokyo. We were there meeting Japanese veterans. Sandy was part of the committee of American Japanese Veterans and Reconciliation, Second World War veterans. And here's a picture of him, right here. Japanese veterans came to salute American veterans on VJ Day in Waikiki. Yeah, so he played a good part. He found it interesting how Japanese and American veterans, not all, but many could come out and shake hands after all these years. Kind of a nice soul, and he even helped pay for some of the banners and all, so he was a great guy. One of the highlights, of course, was VJ Day the night before at the hotel in Waikiki. a number of Midway veterans had come by and they were at the bar and Japanese veterans on the other side and said, hey, wouldn't this be great? And Sandy goes, can you believe that? Midway veterans and isn't Maeda Midway Japanese veteran? Oh, they are. Wow, is that incredible? You think they would shake hands? Let's try it. We introduced them and sure enough, they got off. They started drinking beer and all kinds of stuff. So Sandy, we got to do something even better. This works so well. Let's come back tonight at 7:45 when they're finished. The Japanese are going to finish their dinner. I'm going to have all the Midway veterans come to the back door and I'm going to dim the lights. And as soon as the Japanese veterans are finishing and they're clearing the tables, I'm going to open the back door and then I want all the Midway veterans to sneak in on the back and they're going to flip open the lights and say, surprise! But instead of war, it's a surprise and friendship. And they all got up, they were shaking it. The Japanese veterans got caught by surprise again by the American veterans out of the dark, unexpectedly. That was a highlight, and Sandy had a great laugh at that. Then we had it's a shameful thing, all the pieces of the Arizona are left over there in Waipiwa Peninsula, it's terrible. Yeah, I mean, just letting it rust away. So way back in 95, hey, let's go on and get a couple pieces for souvenirs. Yeah, at least you can give us some peace, some respect. So Sandy, you cannot come out now with your white pants and white shoes and red hat. You gotta come out in green. Okay, we gotta sneak into the woods down this muddy road and we'll go and saw off some pieces of bent metal. It's okay. And sure, he shows up at the gate. It's for some unknown reason, it's unlocked. We get in, and here he is, white shoes, white pants. Sandy, you stand out, red aloha shirt. What are you doing? We're trying to get all the way into Navy base here. We're gonna get arrested. Don't worry, the gods are with us. Sure enough, he sawed off a nice piece that looked like a ship, and he preserved that in respect to all the Arizona men killed in action, put it up there, and was in his house his last day. So overall, great guy, heartfelt, good man all the way through.
Hi, I'm Beth Hoban, past president of the Rotary Club of Honolulu Sunset. Sandy Gaston was inducted as a Rotary member of the Honolulu Sunset, sponsored by Harold Estes on March 26, 1996. Sandy was a very generous donor, especially with the Rotary Foundation. In fact, became a White Hat Society member, which is very prestigious, making a generous donation every year. Thank you, Sandy, because of all your donations, you made a big difference here in our local society and globally, so that we could do all our community service projects. Thank you, Sandy. Sandy was a devoted member of the Rotary Club. He went to all the meetings as much as he could. Every Thursday, you could see Sandy at the same spot, same table with Bob and Sharon Ernhorn, with his iced tea with lemon, hot soup, and of course, ready to do the Rotary Minute. The Rotary Minute was kind of like the introduction of our meeting, and he would talk about something about Rotary. Now, when he couldn't drive, Jonathan Okabe, another member, picked him up and took him to the meetings. He wanted to make sure he made all the meetings, and he tried. Sandy inspired my husband, Jim, and I to go to Miniature Wonderland. It's a train museum in Hamburg, Germany. Oh, big museum, and I became a train enthusiast after that. We sat down with Sandy, watched the video about Miniature Wonderland, books, and lots of stories, endless stories about trains. Sandy, probably, I'm sure, up there, building your own museum, talking with your friends, like Mark Twain and all you other friends. Sandy, you'll always be with us. Ahui ho. Until we meet again. Aloha.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandy's friend from many years ago, and He was a great guy. I met him from the Shriners and Freemasons, and I ended up taking care of his house for him as a pest controller. So I got to go through his house, looking at all his neat things. And every time I go there, he's got something new to show me. He's a wonderful guy. And like they say, you know, he donated a lot, which I knew. He told me a lot of stories about things he used to do. And I used to think, wow, wish I could be like him. But there's not much to say that everyone else has said, but he was just a really great, terrific guy. And at least he was generous with his money. Most people take it with them and give it to some crazy charity. But I think he really enjoyed sharing his money and seeing his money go to somewhere, and he'd like to enjoy watching it work, and he'd be a part of it, which kept him busy. He was a single man almost all his whole life, and so that was his passion, just helping out others, and that he did a lot. And truly, as much as I knew, I learned a lot more about him tonight, because he didn't tell me everything, and I'm like, wow. And it's all I can say. He was just a great guy, and he's a good guy to know, and very generous.
I got a call from a good dear friend of mine, David Livingston, and he asked me if I would do an out call for a guy named Sandy Alexandra, and I said no, I don't do out calls, but Sandy kept calling me, and the third time I decided to give him a chance and went over to his house, and the place was packed out, and I ended up staying for hours, and he toured his whole entire house pretty much, and I ended up massaging him for the past 5 years, twice a week. Spent a lot of time with them, more time than my own husband. But I absolutely loved him. He had a huge heart, gave me a lot of gifts. I clipped his nails, massaged his feet and his hands, and gave him baths. When he had his heart attack, he asked me to come give him showers, and I just love him. I'm gonna miss you, Sandy. I love you, buddy. And I hope that you're in a better place. And I'm gonna miss hanging out with you. You're like a brother to me. And I'm gonna miss seeing the kitty cats and going to dinners and just all the moments we shared together. You take care and rest in peace.
I met Sandy about 16 years ago through a mutual friend who was a designer. And when I first met him, I kind of realized, like, wow, this guy is different. Because he questioned everything I did when I first started doing work for him. But over time, we ended up becoming real good friends. In fact, we basically spoke every day. If it wasn't about work, it was about things on TV or current events. And it's funny because when you knew somebody for like 16 years, so I met him when I was like in my late 30s. I'm 51 now, or 52. It's like life-changing because he's like, even though he's like 20 years older than me, he was like one of my best friends, like literally like one of my best friends. And it's, I don't know, life is different without him. I just miss the conversation we had and the knowledge and his generosity. And, God bless him, and I know he had a good life, and one day we'll meet again. I love you, Sandy. God bless.
Hi, I'm Kathy Chapman. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I met Sandy 30 years ago. I came over with an older friend of mine. He's like a grandfather to us. He served on the Bowfin, and we actually met at the Bowfin and became friends. I went with the older gentleman to visit him several times in Connecticut, and we became good friends. I went back and forth by myself to visit him a few times and kept in touch through the years. About 10, 11 years ago, decided I would just come and see him. So he said, come on. And after I came out the second time, he asked me to marry him. I suggested instead of a church wedding to give him a guy-man wedding. So we got married on the deck of the Bowfin, and Admiral Hayes married us, one of his very good friends. So we also had another ceremony in Atlanta, Georgia, but the one that really counted was the one here. So we did from my friends there and his friends here, so they wouldn't have to travel. But he was very happy. We had our reception here after we were married on the deck of the Bowfin, and we were together for 6 years, and it was very good. And I loved him very, very much. I still miss him. He did a lot of good in the world. He told me he was a philanthropist, and he really was. He was a patriot. He did everything from his heart and soul, and he loved America. He loved Navy League particularly, and our injured vets, and helping the ones currently serving in military service have a little bit better quality life with their families. So I think he gave as much as he could from all of his heart, and I think the world's a much better place because of him.
Sandy, my friend. Everybody knows how big of a heart he has, but nobody really talked about how he was a little bit rougher on the edges. You know, he was rough when he talked to you about politics, and rough when he talked to you about his family and his personal life. But he was even rough when he talked about how much he cared for you. Man, sorry. Sandy definitely had a big heart, and rough and gruff, but he really was just a big teddy bear. Yeah, I worked with him for 7 years, 8 years, and he every day was a new experience. And Sandy, we would talk about everything and anything, and he definitely had an eye for beautiful things. When it came to art and cars and people, yeah, he definitely knew how to appreciate the beauty in everything. And I worked with him to get him to take care of himself, but this guy was always was always trying to take care of me, you know, trying to make sure that I took a break and tried to always get me to go out to dinner with him. And definitely worked hard, and he recognized that, and he would always grumble at me to just like take a break, take it easy and relax. And he would always talk about, oh, well, when are we gonna go to dinner? When are you gonna let me take you out to lunch? And that was definitely his way to show that he cared. Yeah. Sandy, my friend, I'm gonna miss you.